Hi everybody and welcome to What's the Stitch, a not-so-weekly web program about sewing, costuming, and historic dress. I'm sorry it's been so long. The last couple of months have been a little nuts. I've gone back to work with my day job and that has really cut down on my sewing and recording time. But I am back now! Videos may be coming a little bit more sporadically, but they will still be coming. Y'all seem to really enjoy my video on the making of my 1860s inspired ball gown skirt, so today I'm going to walk you guys through how I made the bodice. For this bodice, I used McCall's 7885, a lovely ball gown design by the incredibly talented Angela Clayton. I started out by, of course, pinning my pieces to the fabric. I cut one of the fabric, one lining and interlining, and some interfaced cotton that I had left over from a previous project. I realized once this was done that I did not really have to interface this so stiffly, so take it from me, you don't need quite as many layers as I did. After that, I basted together my lining and interlining pieces. Normally I would use my serger for this, but it's still mad at me, so hand basting it was destined to be. Then it was time to fit the lining. I did do a mock-up for this with some old sheeting before filming, but I didn't include any of that in this video because I thought it would be super boring and you don't need to see me fitting this thing twice. I pinned my pieces loosely to each other, then pinned the center points of each to my dress form to anchor them in place as I pinned. Once that was done, I sewed my pieces together and marked my boning channels with pins. Here was another thing I learned in retrospect. I should have marked the boning channel for the back while it was actually still on the mannequin, and you will see why later. For my boning, I like to use Ridgeline. A lot of people prefer to use plastic boning, but to be honest, it just kind of annoys me. So I cut the pieces to the length of my boning channels, which I sewed after I had them pinned in place. And then I cap the pieces with some little snippets of vinyl patching. This stuff is a godsend. Anytime I use boning, I use this stuff to cap the ends. It keeps the ends from poking through the fabric as you wear the costume. Once I have that done, I pin the lining back onto the dress form, because it's time to pin the outer layer. Like I did with the lining, I pin them to the mannequin at the center of each piece to anchor them as I do the fitting. Now once I start fitting the back, some of you might notice that the boning channels are crooked. I ended up actually having to take them out and redo them. This is why I was saying earlier that I should have marked my boning channels while it was still on the mannequin instead of relying strictly on the pattern. Once I got those boning channels sorted out, I pinned my fabric and lining pieces together and sewed them at the top and bottom. Then I clipped my seams so it would curve more smoothly once I turned it right side out. Then I got to finish the back. I put the bodice back on my dress form and pinned it firmly in place. Then I trimmed the edges and cut some bias tape to bind the inner edge. Once I sewed the bias tape on, I then whip stitched the ends to the inside of the bodice. I'm doing a corset back with this, so I laid the bodice flat on my coffee table so I could be sure that I marked the eyelet holes evenly. Then I got out my handy dandy eyelet punch. I love this thing, I really do. It makes doing corset backs so much easier. I've worked with awls and stuff to make the holes, but when I'm going through that many layers of fabric, I'd rather save myself the time, you know? I used a black satin bias tape for the lacing. I thought it gave it a really nice contrast and I just love the feel of the satin. I did a French seam on the sleeves as well. Then I ran 2 parallel lines of loose gathering stitches along the top and bottom to create the puffs. Then I cut a couple of frills to top the sleeves for more of the lace that I used for the skirt apron and gathered the tops of those as well. I gathered down the bottom of the sleeve to the size of the cuffs that I cut and sewed it into place. Then I folded the cuffs up and pinned and whip stitched them to seal the ends. This is where I love my thimbles because this is quite thick fabric and my fingers were very sore by the end of this project. Then I sewed the finished sleeves to the bodice and turned the lining inwards, pinning and then whip stitching the lining into place. Now for the fun part. I had some frilly black organza trim left over from a bustle skirt that I made a couple of years ago, so I used that to trim the cuffs and the neckline of this bodice. It's super pretty, but man did it kill my fingers to sew it all on. I also wanted to trim the neckline with some black beaded fringe, but I didn't have enough left in my sewing stash, and I couldn't find any others in the store or online that I liked, so no beaded fringe for now. I may add that later if I find more. And now my bodice is done. I learned a lot with this project, and I'm pretty pleased with how it came out. And I still have more of this fabric, so I will probably make more things out of it later. I'm putting serious consideration into turning the leftovers into an Edwardian walking suit, but that's going to be a project for a later day. Okay everybody, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you enjoyed seeing how I made the bodice for my 1860s inspired ball gown. If you did, please like and subscribe, and if you want to be notified when I post any upcoming videos, don't forget to ring that bell. If you've got any suggestions for future projects or things you want to learn how to make, or things you want to know the history of, please leave me a comment below and I will include those in a future video. Alright, thank you so much for watching everyone, and I will see you next time.